The colony of Vortex Prime had been a beacon of human progress, a sprawling metropolis teeming with life and innovation. Its towers stretched high into the clouds, and its ports were always busy with ships arriving from distant systems. But now, as the first reports came in, there was only silence, no communication, no warning, just the eerie hum of an unbroken stillness. General Iris Kincaid stared at the holographic display before her, the red alerts flashing in her peripheral vision. She'd been briefed minutes earlier on the sudden disappearance of contact with Vortex Prime and other outer colonies, but this was more than just a communication breakdown. Something worse was happening. The reports from nearby systems told of explosions in the skies, energy surges unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, and massive ships appearing out of nowhere, tearing through civilian ships and military defenses like paper. Kincaid stood tall, the weight of command pressing on her shoulders. The United Human Commonwealth's forces were scattered across the outer rim, their fleets stretched thin, and Vortex Prime was one of the largest human colonies in the sector. Its fall would be catastrophic. "We need answers," Kincaid muttered under her breath, fists clenched. She wasn't alone in her thoughts. Her intelligence officer, Lieutenant Caleb Roth, hovered nearby, his fingers flying across his console as he tried to pull up any information he could find. The faces of the other officers in the war room were tense, their eyes reflecting the same deep concern. "It's not just Vortex Prime," Roth said, his voice low but urgent. "I've been tracking signals, and there are more anomalies. Several colonies along the outer rim have gone dark in the last few hours. We think it's coordinated." "Coordinated," Kincaid echoed. "By who?" "That's the problem," Roth replied, narrowing his eyes. "We don't know yet. These ships, they're not from any known faction. No signature matches anything in the Commonwealth database. And they're fast. Too fast for any human ship we've encountered. Whoever they are, they've been planning this for a while." Kincaid's jaw tightened. This wasn't a random attack. The unknown fleet had executed the perfect strike, targeting multiple worlds at once, leaving no time for defense. The fact that they had somehow evaded all detection made it clear. They knew exactly what they were doing. "Any survivors?" Kincaid asked, though she knew the answer before it came. Roth hesitated for a moment. "Only fragments of transmission, but nothing that suggests anyone's left alive. The last transmissions from Vortex Prime indicated some kind of planetary bombardment. It wasn't a military strike, though. It felt," he faltered, "it felt personal." Kincaid's gaze hardened. "Find out who did this. Now." Before Roth could respond, another officer stepped forward, his face pale. "General, we've intercepted a message. A warning of sorts." The officer activated the transmission. A cold, metallic voice crackled through the speakers, its tone emotionless and calculating. "You are being watched. The end of your world is inevitable. Your kind is weak, your defenses insufficient. We are the X-Thresh Dominion. Prepare to fall." Kincaid's breath caught. She'd never heard of the X-Thresh Dominion, but the message left no room for doubt. This was an invasion, an extinction event, and humanity was in the crosshairs. "Signal a full-scale mobilization," Kincaid commanded, her voice sharp. "We're going to hit them before they can strike again." Her officers scrambled into action, but Kincaid's mind was already working through the possibilities. The X-Thresh Dominion. Whoever they were about to learn that humanity wasn't so easily defeated. They had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. It was time to make the first strike. The Bridge of the Vigilance, a warship with decades of history, was a hive of activity. General Kincaid stood at the front, her eyes locked onto the massive holo table in front of her, which displayed a flickering map of the outer colonies. Each red dot represented another human world, fallen silent under the assault of the X-Thresh Dominion. Vortex Prime was still the largest, but several other colonies were already in danger of being wiped out entirely. "How much time do we have before the next wave hits?" Kincaid asked, not looking away from the map. "We estimate 3 hours, General," Lieutenant Roth replied, his voice tight with urgency. "The X-Thresh fleet is moving at an accelerated pace. We're not sure how, but they're coordinating their attacks faster than we can respond." Kincaid exhaled sharply. The X-Thresh were ruthless, and they had no mercy for humanity's worlds. But there had to be more to this assault than just random destruction. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being targeted with purpose. Every attack, every colony, seemed strategically planned. "We need more intel," Kincaid said, turning to Roth. "Is there anything on the X-Thresh? Any intelligence on their tactics or weaknesses?" Roth hesitated, tapping away at his console. "I've been digging through our databases, but we don't have much. They're not listed in any of our military archives, and their technology doesn't match anything we've encountered before. But there's something strange." Kincaid raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "There's a pattern," Roth continued. "I found a classified report from decades ago, hidden within the Commonwealth's archives. It references an ancient human expedition to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They encountered an alien race, the X-Thresh. It was believed to be a myth, dismissed as a hoax, but—" Roth trailed off, eyes widening as he read further. "Go on," Kincaid urged. Roth activated a secure feed, and an old file appeared on the hologram, marked with the red warning of top secret. It depicted a series of data logs from a long-forgotten human exploration mission, Project Horizonfall. The mission had been conducted in the Outer Rim, where the X-Thresh had first made contact with humanity, but the report stopped abruptly. The crew had vanished without a trace, and the report's conclusion was cryptic. "The X-Thresh are not only predators, they are the architects of extinction." Kincaid frowned. "Architects of extinction? What does that mean?" "I don't know, General," Roth said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But it seems like humanity's first contact with the X-Thresh was part of something much larger. They weren't just looking for territory, they were after something more." Kincaid's pulse quickened. If the X-Thresh had been here before, if they had studied humanity and its weaknesses, then this wasn't a random attack. This was something deeply personal. They weren't just targeting colonies, they were hunting humans. "What are they after?" Kincaid murmured, mostly to herself. The question lingered in the air as Roth pulled up another set of coordinates. "General," Roth said, his eyes now scanning rapidly across the data, "we might have an answer. There's an ancient planet, long abandoned by humanity, where the last known records of the X-Thresh were found. It's a ghost world, lost to time. But if the X-Thresh are returning to finish what they started, this might be where it all began." Kincaid's eyes locked onto the coordinates. If they could find answers there, they might have a chance to turn the tide. But there was no time to waste. Every second counted. "Set a course for this world," Kincaid ordered, her voice unwavering. "Prepare for an expedition. We're going to find out what the X-Thresh want, and we're going to stop them." As the ship's engines roared to life, Kincaid couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The past was coming back to haunt them, and whatever lay on that ancient world might hold the key to humanity's survival or its doom. The Vigilance cut through the blackness of space, its engines roaring as it sped toward the coordinates Roth had uncovered. The journey was tense, each officer on the bridge focused on their tasks, but despite the urgency, Kincaid couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at her. The more they uncovered about the X-Thresh, the more she realized this was not just a military campaign, it was a war of survival, and something more sinister was lurking beneath the surface. "General, we've arrived at the system," Roth called from his station. His voice was steady, but Kincaid could hear the edge of concern in it. The planet they were headed to was a barren, dead world, its atmosphere long ago stripped away by some ancient disaster. Whatever secrets it held had been buried beneath layers of dust and time, hidden away from humanity's reach. "Prepare the landing party," Kincaid said, her voice firm. "We're not waiting around. We're going in." As the team assembled in the hangar bay, a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air. Kincaid was joined by Roth, along with a small group of elite soldiers from the Vigilance's Special Ops Division. The mission was clear: retrieve any data, artifacts, or clues about the X-Thresh and their long-lost connection to humanity. But beneath the surface of their mission, Kincaid knew there were far more questions than answers, and one of them was already beginning to take shape. The landing was rough, as expected. The planet's surface was a mix of jagged rock formations and scorched earth. There was no sign of life, no indication that anything had ever thrived here, only silence. They trekked for hours, moving deeper into the desolate landscape until they reached a hidden complex, half buried beneath rubble. It was old, ancient even, its structure almost alien in design, a mixture of human and something else, something darker. Inside, they found the remnants of an old outpost, abandoned in a hurry. Equipment was scattered, data consoles flickering with long-forgotten information, but it was the last room that caught Kincaid's attention. There, on a pedestal, was a single, unmarked data cube. The markings on it were unlike anything she had ever seen, the language foreign even to the most advanced translators in the fleet. "Is this it?" Kincaid asked, turning to Roth. "Is this the key?" Roth examined the cube carefully, then nodded. "It has to be. The signal we're getting from it is similar to the one we detected before, right before the X-Thresh attacks started, but something's wrong. This doesn't feel like a normal data file." Before Kincaid could ask what he meant, a voice broke the silence, cold and cutting. "General Kincaid, I'm afraid I can't let you take that." Kincaid whirled around, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. Standing in the doorway, her expression cold and unreadable, was Captain Claire Donovan, one of the highest-ranking officers aboard the Vigilance. She had been trusted with key intelligence, her loyalty unquestioned by Kincaid, until now. "Captain Donovan," Kincaid said, her voice a mix of surprise and anger. "What are you talking about? Step aside." Donovan didn't budge. Instead, she motioned to the soldiers who flanked her, all of them pulling weapons from their holsters. "I can't let you jeopardize this mission, General. We've been compromised. You've all been compromised." The words hit Kincaid like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, compromised? What the hell is going on?" Donovan's eyes flashed with cold resolution. "I've been working with them. The X-Thresh knew this day would come, and they sent me to make sure you wouldn't find out the truth. You see, General, humanity wasn't just a target in this war. You were the experiment." Kincaid's blood ran cold as the realization sank in. Donovan wasn't a traitor. She was something worse. She had been planted among them, a sleeper agent from the very beginning. And now, her true purpose had come to light. The soldiers moved in, weapons aimed at Kincaid and her team. Roth's eyes met Kincaid's, a silent understanding passing between them. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for control of the future of humanity itself. "Everyone down," Kincaid barked, diving to the side as gunfire erupted in the small room. A firefight ensued, the soldiers scrambling to take cover. Kincaid's heart pounded in her chest as she faced the cruel reality. The real enemy wasn't just the X-Thresh. It was within their own ranks. And now, the mission had changed once more. The gunfire subsided as the last of Captain Donovan's soldiers fell to the ground, their weapons clattering against the stone floor. The betrayal was still fresh, the weight of the revelation that one of their own had been working with the X-Thresh sinking in like a dagger to Kincaid's heart. Donovan was gone, but her final words lingered in Kincaid's mind. Humanity was the experiment. What did that even mean? And why hadn't they realized sooner? But there was no time to dwell on it. The mission was still alive, and the data queue was within their grasp. Roth moved quickly, pulling up the data from the queue on his portable console. The room was tense as the flickering holographic interface revealed a map, coordinated locations of X-Thresh strongholds, hidden within sectors humanity had long abandoned. and more chillingly, a series of encrypted files, marked with symbols Kincaid recognized from the mysterious language in the archives. "We need to get this back to the Vigilance, now," Roth said, his voice strained as he continued to analyze the data. "This could be the key to understanding everything. The X-Thresh's methods, their goals. This could be how we stop them." Kincaid nodded, though her mind was racing. Every step they took seemed to reveal a new layer of darkness. Donovan's betrayal was only the tip of the iceberg. The X-Thresh were more than conquerors. They were orchestrators of something far more insidious. And now humanity had unwittingly stepped into a larger war, one that reached back into the annals of history. The team made their way back to the landing craft, securing the queue and preparing to leave the barren world behind. As the shuttle's engines roared to life, Kincaid couldn't help but glance back at the ruined planet, a ghostly silhouette against the endless void of space. What had happened here? What had humanity lost? And more importantly, what had it gained? The Vigilance was waiting in orbit, its massive frame looming like a fortress in the stars. As the shuttle docked and the team disembarked, Kincaid made her way directly to the command deck. Roth was already running simulations, the holographic interface lighting up as he sifted through the newly decrypted data. Kincaid stood beside him, her eyes scanning the map of X-Thresh strongholds. "It's not just that they're preparing for war," Roth said, his voice shaking slightly. "They've been moving toward something. A central location, a core that could power their entire fleet. And it's here, on the other side of the galaxy." Kincaid's stomach churned. The implications of this discovery were far-reaching. Are they planning to launch an all-out invasion? Roth nodded, his fingers flying over the console as he mapped out the X-Thresh fleet's movements. "It's more than that. The central core, if we're reading this right, could be the key to unlocking their technology, their power. If they control it, they can reshape the galaxy. We might be looking at something even worse than extinction." Before Kincaid could respond, the ship's alarms blared, cutting through the tension in the room. "General," a voice crackled over the comms, "you need to see this." Kincaid sprinted toward the bridge, her heart pounding. As she entered, the image on the main screen sent a shockwave through her body. A massive object, a ship unlike anything human design could fathom, drifted into view. Its surface was a mosaic of strange, alien markings, and the energy readings it emitted were off the charts. "It's a ship," Kincaid murmured, "but it's like nothing we've ever seen." "This is no ordinary ship," Roth said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's the X-Thresh's flagship, and it's been here, hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to find it." Kincaid's mind raced. If the Dominion had been hiding such a powerful ship all this time, then everything they had seen so far was just the beginning. The real war, the real battle for humanity's survival, was about to begin. "Get ready for battle," Kincaid ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We're going after them. No more hiding." The Vigilance powered up, its engines roaring with newfound purpose. As they closed in on the massive alien ship, Kincaid could only wonder what lay beyond. Would this be humanity's last stand, or the beginning of a new, unimaginable war? The answers were within reach, but one thing was certain: everything was about to change. The Vigilance cut through the emptiness of space at maximum speed, its engines humming with the raw power needed to close the gap between them and the massive X-Thresh flagship. The ship loomed like a shadow, its sleek, almost organic design defying every convention of human architecture. It was a thing of nightmares. Alien in every sense, a fusion of biology and technology that pulsed with an energy unlike anything Kincaid had ever seen. "We're within range," Roth called out, his voice tight with a mix of awe and apprehension. "The flagship is emitting high-level energy signatures. It's preparing for something. We need to strike now before it powers up its weapons." Kincaid's gaze remained fixed on the massive vessel as it grew larger on the main view screen. It was almost as if it were alive in a way that humans could never fully understand. Her instincts told her this would be no ordinary battle. If the X-Thresh had the technology to hide such a ship for this long, they had resources humanity could barely comprehend. "Helm, bring us in close," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension in the air. "We need to disable their weapons systems before they can retaliate." The crew sprang into action, their hands moving with practiced precision, as they prepared for the coming conflict. Kinkid's mind was focused entirely on the task ahead. The data they had retrieved from the ancient outpost had been clear, that X-Thresh were not just invading, they were executing a plan centuries in the making, and humanity's survival was an obstacle they no longer tolerated. "General, we're being hailed," one of the comm officers said, his voice shaky. On screen, Kinkid responded, narrowing her eyes as the image of an alien figure appeared. Its face was covered by a mask-like structure, but the voice that came through was chillingly familiar, cold, emotionless, as if speaking through a mouth that had forgotten what it was to feel. "You have found us, General Kinkid," the voice intoned. "It is too late. Your kind has lived too long. The X-Thresh Dominion does not tolerate such imperfections." Kinkid's jaw tightened. This was it. The enemy was speaking directly to them, and they were not hiding behind faceless ships or anonymous assaults. The X-Thresh wanted them to know who was in control. "Why now?" Kinkid demanded, her voice calm but steady. "What is it you want from us?" The figure's mask seemed to glimmer, its alien eyes glowing faintly. "We have no need for your world, Kinkid. We are not conquerors. We are the end. You are the final test. The experiment to prove the weakness of your kind, and you have failed." A surge of anger filled Kinkid's chest, but she held her composure. "You've already wiped out hundreds of colonies. What makes you think we'll just let you finish the job?" The X-Thresh figure tilted its head, as if considering her words. "You cannot fight what has already been decided. You are dust. Your time is at an end." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in a tense, suffocating silence. Kinkid felt her blood run cold as the implications of the conversation sank in. The X-Thresh had already made their decision. They weren't here to negotiate or to conquer. They were here to extinguish humanity once and for all. "Brace for impact," Roth shouted, pulling Kinkid out of her thoughts as the flagship unleashed a massive pulse of energy from its main cannon, a brilliant beam that cut across the darkness of space. The Vigilance shook violently, the ship's hull groaning under the strain of the attack. "Shields are holding," the tactical officer called out, but Kinkid knew it wouldn't last. That X-Thresh ship was vastly superior in firepower and technology, and they'd been caught off guard by the first strike. "We need to fight back," Kinkid said, her voice resolute. "Deploy all interceptors. Target their energy conduits. Take out their main cannon." The battle was on, and there was no turning back. The Vigilance's weapons fired in response, but it was clear that humanity was outmatched. The X-Thresh ship absorbed every shot like it was nothing, its shields impervious to anything they could throw at it. As the Vigilance weaved and dodged incoming fire, Kinkid's mind raced. There had to be a weakness, something they hadn't seen yet. The data from the ancient planet was the key, they just needed to crack it. Roth was already at his console, his fingers flying over the controls as he analyzed the readings. "There," Roth shouted, pointing at a section of the X-Thresh ship that flickered briefly. "There's a power fluctuation in their energy core. If we can hit it with a concentrated burst, we can disable their weapons long enough to board." Kinkid nodded sharply. "All hands, target that weak point. This is our chance." The Vigilance shifted course, its weapons locking onto the vulnerable point. A few seconds later, a bright, focused beam shot out from the ship, slamming into the X-Thresh flagship. For a moment, the alien ship trembled, its energy readings spiking wildly. "Direct hit," the tactical officer shouted. "Their weapons are offline." Kinkid didn't wait. "Prepare for boarding. We take that ship now, or we die trying." The time had come. Humanity had one shot to stop the X-Thresh, and it would be a fight to the very edge of extinction. The Vigilance surged forward, its hull vibrating from the last strike as the X-Thresh flagship reeled from the damage. The battle had shifted, and now it was humanity's turn to strike. Kincaid stood at the command station, her eyes fixed on the massive alien vessel ahead. Their weapons were down, but the X-Thresh weren't defeated yet. This wasn't just a war of firepower. It was a war of survival, and humanity's resilience would be its greatest weapon. "Prepare to board," Kincaid ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos of the bridge. "We take that ship now." The crew moved quickly, adrenaline pumping through their veins as they coordinated the boarding party. Roth was already at the ready, his face set with determination. The soldiers, still battle-hardened, despite the surprise attack, followed Kincaid's lead without hesitation. This was their chance to turn the tide. If they could breach that X-Thresh flagship, they might just uncover the key to ending this war before it spiraled beyond control. The ship's docking bay doors hissed open as the boarding pods were deployed, each one loaded with soldiers and equipped with heavy weapons. The thrusters kicked in, and the pods shot through the void, heading toward the belly of the beast. Kincaid's heart hammered in her chest, but there was no room for fear. Not anymore. The enemy had already shown their hand. This wasn't a fight for land or power. This was an existential struggle for the future of humanity. As the pods made contact with the X-Thresh ship, the soldiers deployed in a controlled chaos, securing the docking area and establishing a foothold. Kincaid was among the first out, her weapon raised as she scanned the dark, cavernous hallways of the flagship. The air felt thick with something otherworldly, alien technology humming all around her, its sleek lines and strange materials alien to the touch. The corridors were eerily quiet, almost as though the ship itself was waiting, watching. "We need to move fast," Roth said, his voice tense. "The longer we stay here, the more reinforcements they'll send. We don't know how many of them are aboard." Kincaid nodded. "Stay in formation. We find the control center and take it. No one gets left behind." The team pushed forward, navigating the twisting, labyrinthine hallways of the alien ship. As they advanced deeper into the heart of the flagship, they encountered no immediate resistance. It was unsettling. The ship seemed almost empty, like a predator lurking in the dark, waiting to strike when they were most vulnerable. "Something's wrong," Kincaid muttered under her breath, her instincts telling her to stay alert. "They're letting us in. This isn't just a simple defense." Roth paused, glancing at a nearby console. "General, there's something here. These consoles, there's data flowing through them, and I think it's tied to the ship's mainframe. We can tap into their systems and find out where the control center is." Kincaid didn't hesitate. "Do it, now." Roth's fingers flew over the alien console, his face bathed in the eerie glow of the unfamiliar interface. "I'm in," he said after a tense moment. "It's a bioorganic system. The ship is alive, or at least, it's fused with biological elements. This isn't just a vessel, it's a weapon. And the control center is..." He stopped, his eyes widening. "It's not just a command station, it's a central core of sorts. This chip is a living entity, and we're not just facing its military, we're facing its creators." Kincaid's blood ran cold. If this ship was alive, if the X-Thresh had melded their technology with something sentient, they weren't just fighting an army. They were up against a mind capable of adapting, learning, and evolving faster than anything humanity had ever encountered. "How do we kill it?" Kincaid asked, her voice low and steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. Roth's expression hardened. "I don't know if we can. This chip, this living weapon, it's the culmination of everything the X-Thresh have been working toward. If we can't disable it from the inside, the whole galaxy is in danger." Kincaid's resolve deepened. There was no turning back now. The Vigilance might have been the spearhead of this assault, but they were about to face something far darker than any warship or fleet. This was an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced, a living weapon designed to crush humanity's existence. But they weren't going down without a fight. Humanity had survived worse. Humanity had always found a way. "We'll find a way," Kincaid muttered under her breath, her grip tightening on her weapon. "We're not just going to fight this thing, we're going to destroy it." As the team continued forward, the looming shadow of the X-Thresh flagship grew heavier, and with every step they took, they drew closer to the heart of the beast. The time for defense was over. This was the moment where humanity would become the weapon. The question was, would it be enough to destroy the X-Thresh and claim the future as their own, or would they be wiped from the stars, a forgotten footnote in the galactic history of the universe? The corridors of the X-Thresh flagship had become a maze of chaos and tension. Kincaid's team moved with precision, their weapons ready and their senses on high alert. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the ship felt, like they were walking into the very heart of a predator, its pulse quickening with every step. The ship's bio-organic systems hummed with a low, almost hypnotic resonance, an eerie backdrop to the adrenaline coursing through Kincaid's veins. They were close now, closer to the central core of the ship, where they hoped to find a way to destroy it before the X-Thresh unleashed their full fury on the galaxy. "We're almost there," Roth said, his voice tight with urgency. "The control center should be just ahead." Kincaid nodded, her eyes scanning the dark hallways. She had to admit, she was beginning to feel the weight of the ship's alien architecture. Every corner seemed to hide something, an unseen danger, a new threat lurking just beyond their reach. The silence was unnerving, a calm before the storm that Kincaid knew wouldn't last much longer. The squad reached a large, circular chamber. Its walls were lined with pulsating, organic conduits, and in the center of the room stood the core, a massive, living entity encased in a strange, translucent membrane. The energy it emitted was almost intoxicating, its power surging through the air like an electrical current. It was clear that this was no ordinary control center. This was the heart of the X-Thresh flagship, a weapon, a mind, a living organism all rolled into one. "That's it," Roth breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This thing, it's the ship's central processor, but it's more than that. It's a neural nexus, like the brain of the ship. If we can cut it off, we can disable the flagship." Kincaid's hand instinctively tightened around her weapon as she surveyed the room. She could feel it, a presence, almost as if the ship itself was aware of their intrusion. A low hum reverberated through the walls, and she knew they had crossed a line. There was no going back now. "We need to destroy it," Kincaid ordered, her voice unwavering. "No hesitation. This ship has already killed thousands of us. We're not leaving until it's gone." The soldiers moved forward, setting up charges around the central core. Kincaid kept her eyes trained on the membrane, every fiber of her being alert to the growing sense of danger. It was then that the first signs of resistance appeared. The walls around them began to shift, and the floor vibrated with unnatural force. The ship was reacting. The X-Thresh had sensed the threat, and it was fighting back. From the shadows emerged figures, K-Thresh warriors, their forms sleek and deadly, their skin a shifting blend of organic and synthetic armor. They moved with terrifying speed, their weapons crackling with energy. Kincaid's team fired immediately, the sound of blaster fire filling the chamber. The warriors' shields deflected the initial barrage, but the humans were relentless, pushing forward with every ounce of strength they had. "Keep them back," Kincaid shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "Get those charges set." As the soldiers fought, Kincaid saw the true nature of the X-Thresh warriors, unlike anything they had encountered before. These were not just soldiers. These were the result of centuries of bioengineering, enhanced beyond human comprehension. Each one was a weapon, and they fought with a ferocity that only a species on the brink of extinction could summon. Roth was at the core, his hands flying over a terminal embedded into the ship's bioorganic structure. He was trying to hack into the system, to trigger the charges that would cripple the ship's neural nexus. The Xthresh warriors were closing in on him, their weapons aimed directly at him, but Kinkid was not about to let that happen. With a scream of defiance, she charged toward the warriors, cutting through the air with deadly precision. Her soldiers followed, pushing forward with a renewed sense of purpose. Kinkid was a force of nature, her every move a blur of lethal efficiency. She took down one warrior, then another, her eyes never leaving the core. Time was running out. Finally, Roth shouted, "It's done. Charges are set. Get clear." Kinkid barely spared a glance at him, her focus still on the fight. "Move," she shouted. The squad retreated, blasting their way through the oncoming Xthresh as they reached the exit. The moment they were clear, Kinkid gave the order. "Now." A blinding flash of light erupted from the core as the charges detonated, sending a shockwave through the ship. The entire flagship shuddered, its bioorganic systems writhing in pain as its central nexus was destroyed. The walls cracked, the air filled with a deafening roar, and the ship began to implode, its power source destabilizing. "We've done it," Roth gasped, as they raced toward the docking bay. "The flagship is down." But as they neared the exit, Kinkid's heart skipped a beat. The ship wasn't just falling apart, it was pulling them into its death throes. The Vigilance was waiting for them, but the flagship's collapse was inevitable. If they didn't escape now, they would be caught in the explosion. "Run," Kinkid shouted, as they sprinted toward the escape pods. The Xthresh flagship was dying, but in its final moments, it was determined to take them all down with it. The explosion that tore through the Xthresh flagship was unlike anything Kinkid had ever witnessed. The ship writhed in its death throes, its bioorganic core collapsing in a blinding burst of light. The shockwave sent a ripple through space, shaking the very fabric of the void itself. The blast was massive, enough to vaporize everything in its immediate vicinity. For a moment, time seemed to stretch, the chaos of the explosion suspended in a heartbeat. Kinkid felt a cold sense of finality wash over her as she watched the flagship disintegrate in the distance. The horror, the bloodshed, the fight for survival. It was all coming to an end, but even as the flames of the Xthresh ship consumed it from the inside out, she knew the battle wasn't truly over. This victory might be fleeting, but it was a symbol, a spark, a rebirth. The Vigilance shuddered as the shockwave reached them. The ship's shields held strong, but the crew had to brace for impact as debris rained down from the shattered remains of the Xthresh vessel. Kinkid gripped the armrest, her knuckles white, her heart still racing from the battle. The escape pods had cleared the wreckage, but now they faced the fallout. The Vigilance was damaged, but it had survived, and so had they. "Report," Kinkid barked. Roth's voice came over the comms, calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "We're stable, General, but the damage to the flagship is catastrophic. The Xthresh fleet, what's left of it, is scattering. It won't be long before they regroup, but they've lost their greatest weapon." Kinkid's mind raced. They had destroyed the heart of the Xthresh threat, but this was just the beginning. The war had only been delayed, not won. The galaxy was still in peril, but they had done something monumental. They had broken the Xthresh's stranglehold, exposed their vulnerability, and demonstrated the sheer will of humanity to survive. They had fought back. "Gather our fleet," Kinkid ordered. "We're going to take the fight to them. We will make them understand that humanity won't be wiped out. Not today, not ever." The bridge was silent for a moment as the crew absorbed the weight of her words. Then Roth spoke, his voice filled with awe. "General, you realize what this means, don't you? We've just struck the first real blow. We've shown them that we're not the prey. We're not just survivors. We're a force to be reckoned with." Kinkid's gaze drifted to the stars outside the bridge's viewport. The void stretched out before them, dark, cold, and infinite. but in the wake of the X-Thresh destruction, the stars seemed a little brighter, the horizon a little clearer. There was hope now, a hope that had been all but lost before this battle. Humanity had proven something to itself today. They were not weak, not defenseless. They were capable of rising from the ashes and forging a future against all odds. As the Vigilance set its course back toward the heart of the galaxy, Kincaid allowed herself a moment to breathe. The fight was far from over, but they had made a stand. The stars, once dark and oppressive, now seemed full of possibilities. "We rebuild," she whispered to herself, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "We rebuild and we rise." And in the distance, as if to answer her, a flicker of light appeared at the edge of the known galaxy. It was faint, barely perceptible, but it was there. A new star, a symbol of humanity's resurgence, burning brightly in the black expanse of space. The war was far from won, but humanity's spirit had been reborn, like a star reigniting in the night, and this time, there was no force in the universe that could extinguish it.